plains where the prairie wind rushes. It's Carl and Vincent with field sketches. Oh, yeah, they brought the drama, they brought the feels. Give it up now, this duo's the real deal. Oh, yeah, they brought the drama, they brought the feels. Give it up now, this duo's the real deal. Let's go!
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
Oh, I'm so moved.
Welcome to The Real Story with Nathaniel, guys. Everybody, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Carl Bessai, director, writer, and Vincent Gale, actor in the upcoming movie Field Sketches. It's going to be opening, I don't have the date in front of me. I do have the date in front of me, at the Toronto International Film Festival. What date is that again? Do you have, you know?
Well, we're playing in Toronto on June the 11th, which is coming
Awesome.
up. Yeah, at the Review Cinema.
And we're going to get into that film. We're going to get into some more details. But guys, you've worked together before, and you've both worked on so much stuff. When I went to do my research on you, just mountains and mountains of stuff. What I would like to do, and what I haven't been able to find out is, like, I'm going to go back and forth at least to start off. And the first question is, Carl, who were you before you worked on your first set? Who were you as a person? Like, if you described yourself before you walked on that first set.
I mean, I was an English lit student originally, and I was a big. I did a lot of writing. I loved art. I grew up in a family of my mom was an English professor, and I kind of saw myself heading down this road of maybe academia. I was pretty young, and I remember getting a letter from a grad school in the U.S., quite a great grad school, come and study English lit with us, come, and be
Right.
an academic. And I panicked. I was like, oh, I'm going to be exactly like my mother. My father too was an academic. And I just thought, no, I can't do this. So I had this kind of meltdown, and then I started really scrambling around. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? A lot of my friends at the time were, young people going into, guess what, law school and med school, and I just felt like a little out of touch with what to do, and
Mm-hmm.
where I grew up, which is Alberta, which is where the Edmonton Oilers are from, which is why Vince and I are so excited tonight about, because it's Oiler night.
We should be honest.
Yeah.
The game's going on right now, and these two gentlemen are spending their time with us instead of watching the game that they will possibly lead them to buying Stanley Cup tickets. So,
yeah, but this was a city that in my day was not a big film center. So the idea of being a filmmaker as a growing up in rural Canada, I didn't think that was a thing. I didn't think that was a job. That wasn't something you could do. And then when I found out that you could actually study film and maybe look at film,
Right.
What I liked about film was that it was related to literature in a way. It's about narrative, it's about story, but you didn't have to read all those Tolstoy novels, and you can watch.
I still haven't.
I loved it. I took a class. I was watching films and talking about films all day. Oh, come on. It was great. So that kind of got me going. But sorry, I'm such a rambler, but that desire and interest in cinema has absolutely nothing to do with the nuts and bolts real world industry that you find yourself kind of clawing at the door to get into. And I when I found out what it was like, in the very first job I was on a film set, I mean, I was lost in space, and all of those
I can imagine.
aspirations and dreams is all BS, right? Hey, Matt, buddy, pick up this cable. Come on, get over here. Where's my coffee? The first time I was on a crew, I was a very, very entry-level camera assistant. It's called a camera trainee. He was essentially the grunt that everyone in the camera department kicks around. And there was a focus puller. And the very first time he spoke to me, he said, go to the truck and make me a cappuccino. And I thought he was joking. I thought, this is insane. What are you talking about? Make a cappuccino on the truck? And why would you think I would know anything about making cappuccinos? You know what I mean? But this was my job, keeping the boys in coffee. It was insane. Yeah. I thought I didn't go to school to be a coffee jockey, Anyway. but it, you got to pay your dues,
100%. Yeah. I just, I'm still, even in this position where I'm nobody, like I'm still learning the ropes, and
Yeah.
it's always fascinating from where you started to where you are. And Vincent, I had the same question for you before your first time on set, your first set foot on a set. Who were you as a person? Like how did you identify yourself and who you were?
Yeah, well, I mean, as both of you said, always learning the ropes. But the thing about this job is it's all I've ever done. I stepped into a drama class. I grew up in Scotland, in Glasgow, Scotland. That's where I lived until the early 80s. And I stepped into a drama class there in the late 70s and was cast in a television series that was shooting in the country, and that's all I've ever done. It's really
Wow.
the only job I've ever had is working in television, film, and theater.
So when you started that first job, where did you see yourself, say 25 years down the road? Where did you see your future, like far future? Where were you hoping to
that's
be?
kind of you. It's probably 40 years down the road.
Well,
No, longer, 45. But well, I grew up in an artistic family. My family were all in the music business, in the violin game. My mom taught violin and played in the symphony, and my sisters are both music teachers. I played a lot of music as a kid, and I was just always interested in drama and music. And so that was my life. And I think it would be no matter what. I mean, I think if I wasn't acting, I part of me wishes I was a musician. I mean, I like to, I play all sorts of stuff to amuse myself, but I'm not a musician. But that's kind of what I would love to do, really.
Understood. And Carl, 26 years ago, you were directing Johnny. Where did you see yourself now?
Well, I mean, just getting to that point to be able to make that movie was this huge battle. It was like a huge uphill climb. And I mean, I still kind of, it feels like yesterday, and I still remember that experience, because the battle of that movie set me up to make other movies. But you realize every movie's kind of a battle. You got to start from somewhere. Everyone says no. Nobody thinks it's a good idea or that you can do it, or, there's just so many barriers, and the barriers are always there. And the barriers, they change. There's different kinds of barriers, but I think anyone who doesn't have a stomach for, the adversity, the difficulty, the creativity required just to put a project together. This is even before you roll a frame of film, it's an enormous amount of work. So making Johnny to me was, it was a kind of reaction at the time to being now at this point, I told you my first day on set. Well, that guy who was that camera trainee, I spent a few years climbing those ropes, and then I sort of simultaneously did day calls as a lighting guy and worked my way up the camera departments, trying to get as much understanding of the set. Particularly, I was very interested in camera. I still have a camera in my hands whenever I shoot a movie. Right. Whenever I'm directing a movie, I'm always involved in the cinematography. And so I just felt like, as a guy on this monster set, I worked on a Gus Van Sant movie. I worked with the great DP Fred Elms. He was my boss on a movie. He's the guy who shot Blue Velvet. I mean, these were giants of the industry, and watching them work was incredible. You learned a lot, but I also saw that it was going to be, hell was going to freeze over by the time I got to do what they were going to do. If I was going to stay in this ladder climbing game, I wanted to make my own movies. So how do you do that? And so my initial idea was to find other crew members from big shows and films that I was working on, and there tended to be a sort of disgruntled, lighting guy. This was a common thing. We were talking the 90s, but I would say you'd find these people today. Disgruntled lighting guy who makes really good money, can't stand being bossed around all the time, and really wonders what it would be like to be the boss, And so I tapped into this zeitgeist. I thought, there's enough of these guys. And I got 5 of them together. And the idea was everyone was going to put in $5,000. There was going to be a bunch of these guys that were all putting in $5,000, and we were going to pool our resources. We were all going to be owners and bosses, and I was going to direct this movie. And they were stoked. They were so stoked. But then Christmas was coming. There was a little bit of an industry downturn. These guys lived in big 3-car garage houses in the suburbs, and they had, families, and they were just like, they were nervous about parting with some cash and taking some time out of the game. And it was just like, Carl, I'm really sorry. I know you're a great guy. Just can't do it. Maybe next year. This is the story, right? And so when I went to the cinema and saw the Lars von Trier inspired Thomas Vinterberg film, The Celebration, which was one of the original Dogma movies, which was handheld, unlit, very low tech, very lo-fi, very defying the kind of infrastructure commercial system for filmmaking. When I saw this and I saw how good it was, I thought, you don't need all this crap to make a movie. And so that's kind of been my journey, and I've spent 25 films, so almost 30 years now, making movie after movie after movie. And for a long time, climbing to bigger budgets and more gear and more trucks and more people and more infrastructure. And then about 5 years ago, downturns, the pandemic wasn't great for us. There were strikes, there were issues. And I started to see it like the industry change. It became like a little more like lots of money going to big projects,
right?
But that middle class, that smaller to mid-sized filmmaking that I was doing, I was eroding. And so I sort of went back and have been going back now to a more direct cinema verite, Dogma 95 approach to filmmaking. So when Vince and I started Field Sketches, it was Vince, myself, and then we've got Vince's friends together to put a little acting group, a little ensemble together. And we collaborated and we conversed and we created together. The script changed from our workshops. And then we went out to make the movie with this very small crew because, if we waited around and asked permission from the infrastructure, from the powers that be, the answer was
exactly
no. It's going to be no. And I like that lovely old Francis Ford Coppola line. I'm making a movie, and if you know what's good for you, you'll get in on it, and you'll make it with me. And if you don't, that's your loss. It's too bad for you. And I really think you have to have that kind of brass.
You have to believe in it too.
Yeah.
No, you have to actually just put together the parade and start marching down the street.
Yeah.
People have to see you're going to do it.
People who are going to join you will join you, and that's it.
That's this show. We just have to do it. It sounds incredibly stupid. I'm going to do a talk show, and I'm going to talk to famous people, and I'm going to be on the internet. People are like, so what? Everybody does that, and then you just have to do it and show that you can do it and continue, and respect the people that are there, and get the respect back, and do something of quality. I think once you start doing it, it gets there. The problem is nobody gets started doing it. So that's why you guys doing this has been impressive. But one thing I was looking at, you guys have worked together before. How did you guys first meet before we even get to Field Sketches?
Vince and I have been crossing in the world circles and paths for our whole lives, just by virtue of his father-in-law and his wife's family. They were very significant track and field elite athletes in their day, and also became coaches of the Canadian team. And when I was young, I was on the Canadian national cross country team, went to the world championships in the mid 1980s. That's how old I am. And these people were my coaches. You know, they were the mentors. And my brother, who's an architect, who we kind of lovingly mock in our movie Field Sketches, is an architect and a designer, and he did a restaurant fit for Vince's wife, and we've had these people in common our whole lives. And then Vince comes along as a wonderful stage actor. Originally, that's how I knew Vince, was watching him on stage. We've done a bunch of films together because when you need great actors, you have this group of like-minded people in your world that you call. And Vince has been generous with his time and his effort and his energy with me. And now you can see by looking at us, when I want to cast someone who is a sort of slightly more artistic,
You're right after your leave. I love it. Yeah.
I go, I'm gonna get Vince to play this guy. Then it'll be really personal.
That's I had admit that when I was doing the research for this, I had trouble identifying you two apart at first.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, he's playing a version of you, correct?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is intentional as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me.
Nathaniel, I like to make films that are very kind of built on the DNA of the things that I'm thinking about in the moment. And so the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, I mean, I sort of touched on it a bit, but it's like the industry's changing. It's a frustrating thing in some ways, that movies are dying a little bit. It's becoming more of a streaming world. It's becoming more of a series world. Budgets are getting bigger. Budgets are getting smaller. I think about all that stuff, and it's changed how I approach my work. And I feel like I wanted to make a movie about that, but I didn't want to make a movie about a filmmaker. I wanted to make it about something that I feel has a parallel to filmmaking, which is architecture. Architecture is a field that requires infrastructure the way film does. And Vince and I, we share these experiences because we're men of a certain age, seeing the changes under our feet,
And we also share kind of a cinematic and an artistic aesthetic, right? We like the same things. We revere the same directors and actors and producers and writers. So it makes sense. I mean, I'm Nathaniel. I'm just worried about the day where Carl doesn't call me. Because I know it's coming.
But just to brag about Vince, because it's hard making movies, Nathaniel, and Vince is not.
There's a reason I haven't.
Vince is not Tom Cruise. I am not Denis Villeneuve. We're not making our films at the level that the entire world is going to know our work. But Vince is an actor with an enormous pedigree, has enormous skill. Sure. And he delivers. And the best way to get a great actor to deliver is to spend time. And what's very prohibitive about the kind of, let's just call it the industrial filmmaking machine, is that you spend so much time putting deals together, chasing people, working with agents and managers and lawyers and schedules and craziness. You don't spend enough time on this. This conversation, this dynamic, this dialogue. With Vince, we spent on Field Sketches 6 months in conversation before we even pulled the trigger on the movie. And then through the course of making the movie, Vince is a producer on the movie because Vince it's in his DNA, the movie, how we cut it, what it says, how it says what it says, everything kind of was run through his eyes, his views, his artistic hands, as well as my own. We're partners. And what a lovely way to work.
Yeah, but the generosity that Carl bestowed is incredible, and it's all I've ever wanted as an actor. It's what I revered when I was 15, and I would read these books about Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro and their relationship and their collaboration, and I thought, one day, like how incredible would that be to work with someone who A, you respect their aesthetic, and B, they respect you, and you get to collaborate on this thing and create something else. And so, I mean, not to in any way compare ourselves to those incredible artists, but at the same
You
time,
should.
just to have that that kind of a creative working relationship is all I've ever wanted as an actor. It's like, that is my highest aspiration, and I get to do it with Carl, and it's a gift, an absolute gift.
That's amazing.
Real quick question. Sorry, this is Zaz jumping in. I hear what you're saying, and I understand. So my question to that is this like one of those instances where it's the industry kind of putting a deadline, not allowing you time to create that connection, create that dialogue,
Yeah.
what you said, or like,
Yeah, I think there are firewalls, Zaz. I think there are firewalls around what is called marquee talent. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of experience with marquee talent. I mean, not a lot, but enough to be able to talk pretty openly about it. And my best and most wonderful younger years experience was directing Sir Ian McKellen. And when I met Sir Ian McKellen, he just happened to be, because life is like this, he just happened to be shooting one of those X-Men films, and he shot 1 day a week. And he lived in a beautiful house with a view of the ocean in the same city that I was living in. And the rest of the week, he wanted to do something. And so what did he want to do? He wanted to sit down and talk to me about the screenplay and make our movie together over time. So I had months and months of this. The same thing I'm talking about with Vince. I had months and months of this with one of the greatest actors in the world at the height of his fame. I mean, at the peak of his fame. He was in his mid-60s. He had just done Gandalf. They released a couple of the Lord of the Rings films. I mean, this was huge. I'd go outside with this guy.
There's also an internet meme with Patrick Stewart every day.
Yeah, this is an amazing experience, but it's not
100%.
usual. It's not usual, right? I mean, Ian was and still is my friend. We still hang out when I go to England, you know, but it's not normal, right? Typically, you just don't get access. And that's a problem. It's a problem for everyone, because the more you can develop that trust and language and communication and dialogue, it's going to come across in the art, you know. And when, you know, I remember reading, you know, filmmakers like, I mean, every Hollywood filmmaker, but they're getting 4 or 5 months to shoot a movie, and I you know, just olden days schedules. And I just sort of marvel at that. I'm like, well, what do you do for 4 or 5 months? I mean, how do you shoot for that long? How glorious to, like, you think of Wes Anderson having those dinners and languishing and lounging around with these folks that are his tribe. Of course the films are great, because everyone loves being there. I mean, no one's going, oh my God, get me out of here. Huh?
There's just trust all over. And if you have the right people and you trust them, and that trust is well placed, what can't you do?
You guys have probably watched the Seth Rogen show, you know, The Studio, but you can see he's making fun of all this stuff. But The Studio TV series is actually
I haven't seen it yet.
Well, it's pretty true, right? If you watch it,
I hear it's 100% accurate. Is one of those things like everybody who's been in those rooms knows what he's telling you the truth.
There's all this monkeying around, and there's all these distractions, and none of this has anything to do with the art. Look, respect. I realize that in the world, when I talk about film and what I'm interested in and what my taste is, I'm like probably in this little 3 to 5% zone. Like, most people like big commercial films. Most people like, you know, mainstream entertainment. That's what they want to see. I respect that. That's not what I make. I mean, that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm doing with Vince is personal. It's artistic. It's exploratory. It meanders. Sometimes it's quiet. Hopefully it's not too boring. But my heroes are Mike Lee, John Cassavetes, Ken Loach, you know, filmmakers that make socially responsible stories about real people living real lives. That's what I'm interested in. And there isn't enough of that in the world, and there's not enough money for that in the world. And, you know, so you got to come up with other ways.
That was actually going to answer my follow-up. Sorry, Nathaniel, I didn't mean to jump in, but I was going to say, you were talking about losing a lot over time. You know, so the industry is losing, you know, bits and pieces of its personality, or changing its workflow, its process. What would you guys bring back if you could? other than the fact waiting, like if I could have a 6-month movie shooting next door and now I can make Torch Song Trilogy because Syrian's right next door. What else would you
Nice.
want to bring
The
back subtly?
Harvey Firestein reference.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what I'd bring back instantly, and it's been lost in the pandemic. Is I don't know how many people know this who are not in the business, but it used to be that you would get an audition as an actor, and you would go into a room and you would meet a director and a producer, and you would read the scene for them. And then they would give you notes, and then you might do it again. And if they weren't interested in you, they'd say goodbye. And since the pandemic, that has completely shifted. It's a 100% shift in that world. And now that never happens. You never meet anyone. Everything is done by self-tape. So you sit in your house, you learn the lines, you set up your Zoom, you record yourself, you send it off, and you never hear another thing. You never meet a person.
No feedback.
There's no feedback. You have no idea.
Yeah.
It's like you send everything
That's
into
soul
a vacuum.
killing.
It is soul destroying. It's what is sending me to become an Uber driver. It's just like I can't describe it to you. And the kids don't know any better. And so for the people who didn't get into the rooms and this is all they know, it's just like, it's great because it's a democratization of the industry in some way. It's like now everybody can be seen, but now everybody's seen and nobody's seen all at the same time.
That's
God,
the
yes.
one thing I
mean,
keep
to me-
running
Holy
into.
smokes.
To me, it speaks to a larger question for me when I hear Vince talk about this stuff and what's missing, that human interaction. I think something that's happened in from the directing point of view, from the filmmaking point of view, the kind of promise of democratization that really started actually in the 60s when cameras became more handheld, cameras became smaller, the sort of French New Wave were the first,
I
groups
collect
really
family 8mm films from thrift stores.
Yeah.
Everybody who had a camera were telling stories, even if they were bad at it. And I love watching these old films. So I know what you're talking about.
That promise became went on steroids with digital, and the digital technology has gotten so good. And now everyone everywhere has access to significant image making tools, right? So you'd think it would be great for the business in a way, that there would be more filmmaking, more venues,
more people discovering they can.
But what you've got is a lot of there's a lot of filmmaking. The festivals are overrun with programming. They're getting 5,000-10,000 submissions. Every little festival is getting just inundated. They start charging a lot of fees. They're making
they take away the
$50,000 off of submissions. This kind of thing. So you'd think it's made it very competitive. A lot of these films never see the light of day, and then weirdly there's this kind of firewalled industry that's made up of the big budget stuff where the movie stars are in play and everything is scaled up. You've got movies being made for $300 million. You've got, I go out and work day calls sometimes still in lighting. And I was out on the Tron, the latest iteration of the Tron series. And the amount of money I saw pouring down the drains was just incredible. I mean, these people are really, really skilled. The workers are really, really skilled. The equipment is top notch, but there are truckloads of things that don't get used. There's just, it's scaled up at a rate that just is mind numbing. And I look at this stuff and I go, I don't understand, So to me, what's missing, there's this kind of place where Vince and I work, which is where people interact and exchange with other people, artistic people, over a long period. And every time you talk to a real independent filmmaker, they're celebrating this kind of narrative of experience and connection with other people. That's really beautiful. And I think, there's a wealth of that kind of filmmaking out there, but it's starved for access to screens. Really, I mean, yeah, you can do a your own YouTube channel, but you know, it's
It's
tricky
not the
that
same. It
when
doesn't
you
get seen.
have
It's
all,
hard to be
No,
seen on
no.
YouTube.
yeah,
It's hard to be seen. It's over democratized, and then not, because YouTube
Yeah.
will never list us near the top until we have 1 million people already following us. So we're being suggested to people that have already seen us. It
Yeah.
won't
Exactly.
suggest us to people. I want to see something new about artwork, about filmmakers, about people that it's impossible to climb that ladder in so many
the thing, if
ways.
I can
Yeah.
choose between if I can choose between a film that I'm making where I have 40 trucks or 50 trucks and I block off streets and I have, you know, big tents and I have a big chair and all these people telling me how great I am and all this equipment, I can choose between that and field sketches where I'm working with an intimate group that I know really well.
I would
We're
choose
all
field sketches.
hands on and we're rolling in little trucks, and I'm taking the little one. I like it. I like this way of working. Now, I've had to learn how to do this as a survival tool, you know, because that bigger scale is not available to me. So, you know, I'm an opportunist in a way, trying to make sense out of a changing industry. I love what I'm doing, but I see I mean, Vince and I made a beautiful film. We had a lot of difficulty getting access to film festivals that I've played 10, 12 times in the past. Like I've got a lot of film festival experience, but in this current age, they're so inundated, you can't even get past the gate with a lot of these festivals. And I started to realize, you know, we have to take our work into the theater space, into the streaming space, in the same way, with the same philosophy that we're using to make the work. Because waiting around to be invited, to be asked, to be given permission, to be given the resources, here, be a good fellow and make this movie. Yes, we support you. This isn't going to happen. It's not happening. So you have to rethink filmmaking. And, you know, to my kids, the generation in their 20s today, I think you got to have thick skin to go into filmmaking, because it's a tough living. It's tough. It's not an easy living. It's way easier to do something else.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few young actors getting into it, a young filmmaker, and the optimism was fantastic to see. And my walking away was, I hope they keep that.
Yeah.
And they keep the optimism going, because it's a lot more work that I'm not sure that they saw coming, based on my interviews with established actors. Ben Emanuel, who you've both worked with, he was in this movie, correct? He gave me a knowledge bomb on how hard things can be on every level. You know, and I loved his interview and learning that stuff, and then comparing it to the people coming up in this day and age, just trying to get noticed or to try to get a job where it matters to the next job even.
Well, Ben's an interesting example because he runs an acting school as well as makes films and acts professionally. But he decided a long time ago, look, I'm not interested in doing, you know, working on terrible movies, working on scripts that don't speak to me, on roles that don't speak to me. I would rather pick carefully what it is I do with my craft and run an acting school. But the truth is that most of the work that young actors are going to be invited to do is, there's a lot of really terrible scripts out there, you know, and the airwaves are full of this kind of mediocre movies of the week, kind of, puffy Hallmark style television, you know.
It doesn't have all the keywords. People
love that stuff. Like, there's an audience for that stuff. What I know about myself is that I don't love that stuff, and I don't make that stuff.
I know, but you know what's interesting, Carl, is that you're talking about that, and you've also been talking about the access to marquee talent and the relationships that actors have with directors. And even when you're working, because that's how I make my bread and butter. Like, I'm in the service industry and I make Hallmark films and I make movies of the week and I do little parts and features. But even that, even on that level, a director has no interest in talking to an actor before you're standing on the set. Like, if you reach out to a director, you'll never hear from them again, because they don't have the time. They're talking to everybody else. They're talking to the cinematographers, and they're talking to the gaffers, and they're talking to the location managers, and they're talking to the line producers. They're talking to everybody accept the people that they're going to be collaborating with in front of the camera. And there is a disconnect in terms of the work, because if we were able to have those conversations, the scenes would be better just off the hop, off the jump. By the time you step in front of the camera, you would already be at the next level. But nobody cares. Nobody's interested. In it. It's like making a sausage. It's like making an egg McMuffin. It's the same thing.
Same thing every time.
But there still is remarkably a lot of great cinema that gets made. I mean, that's the kind of beautiful thing too, that you do, you know, you scramble around. Vince and I share lists all the time. Like, did you see this? Did you see that? You know, there's a lot of great work still being done.
100%.
Every year.
Oh, well, yeah.
We marvel at it, you know, but every film, I mean, even like hearing that The Brutalist was a battleground to get made, and that the director Brady Corbett, is that right? Corbett was struggled the whole way and was still like, what was he saying at the Oscars about how broke he was? I was just like, I thought that was incredible. You know?
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
that was. I love hearing stories like that where like I'm gonna do it and hopefully you get behind me and we get it done. I wanted to circle back with you guys kind of on this. The 6 months that you spent, we've touched on this, we've talked about it a lot. Was it just you two, or how often did you have like most of the ensemble or the whole ensemble, or
we got everyone together
before you even shot? Okay.
We started with a group of 4 cast members. So it started with Vince and I just solo, and then we brought in Sarah Canning, we brought in June Laporte, and we brought in Ben Cotton. And what was, I mean, this is just an example of what the process is like. So because it was a small group, we started early days, we were reading scenes and talking about the scenes. And because we only had 4 actors there, I'd kind of read the narration and, you know, chat a bit. And the guys would read, Vince would read his part, which was the main character. So he had lots of stuff to do. But there's little characters coming and going. And so Ben Cotton was reading all the male roles in this one reading that we did. And we left the reading, and Vince and I went for a drink. And we were talking, you know, just disseminating, you know, how'd it go? What'd you think? And we both kind of went, you know, wouldn't it be great if Ben just played both those characters? Because he had this really lovely, very different approach to each of the characters. And this was not an idea that I had in my head working on the script, not even close. And it was a bit like born of the theater concept, you know, and in theater, actors often kind of play multiple roles, and there's an audience is intelligent and people can kind of track that stuff. And right. It was an idea, and we kind of ran with this idea. Now it sort of gave every actor who's central in the movie a couple of roles. And I hope it's not so confusing. I find it just really gratifying to kind of invent things that way with the people I'm working with.
That's what I'm vibing with myself right now. Like that, everybody came together. This idea came up. That's what I liked about being in a band in my old musician days. Yeah. It's a whole bunch of people, and we create, and then we have something at the end. You could call it a product. You can call it art. Yeah.
Yeah. That's nice.
Vincent, I know you got to leave in a little bit, and I did want to talk to you about one thing real quick. You've done a billion things. I know you've probably dealt with enough sci-fi fan talk show hosts.
No, I haven't at all. Please.
I've got a question. I don't think you've been asked, because you've been in everything. Stargate, Battlestar. I had the list in front of me. You know it. I don't have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
But the one thing you haven't done, the one franchise, you are a walking Comic-Con. You have not done Star Trek.
Gosh darn it.
No.
Why?
Star Trek. But it's not done here in Vancouver. That's the issue, right? Like, I mean,
I'll fly you down.
The new show is being done in Toronto. It's a hard get. And yeah, I mean, no Star Trek. I mean, like, I'm just open for business, Nathaniel. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna get you in. That's my personal goal.
Well,
you have to complete the quadfecta of all sci-fi. Right. You did Eureka. I've never interviewed somebody who's been on Eureka before.
I did Eureka, yes.
It was a fantastic show. But that's what was when I was researching you. I was like, I know that guy. I know that I've seen it. And then all these, I'm like, everywhere. Like when I went through IMDb, hundreds of listings. I'm like, yep, that one I saw. That one. Oh, he played that guy. Like it was just kept on going.
Yeah, that I mean, that's just the service industry that we have here in Vancouver.
It's still great,
right? And I I mean, this is my sandbox, and I've chosen to be here because this is where my family is, and I love it, and it's a great part of the world, and it used to be a nice place to work, and now it's just more difficult. But yeah, no, any word that you can put into with the Star Trek people for me,
I know
would
one so
appreciate it.
far. I know one.
Nice.
Who's the one?
She does a voice on the animated series. Bonnie Gordon.
Oh, nice. You see, I mean, I worked with Simon Pegg. Like, I have a good relationship with Simon Pegg, and even he couldn't get me in the story. I mean, I guess he was holding that for himself. It was before his whole Mission Impossible thing. It was before he started dating Tom Cruise. So, I mean,
oh, this Simon. He betrayed us all. He's never coming on the show now. Yeah, and I just because I was impressed with. I mean, I get the service industry, and you do a gig here and you do a gig there, but I had to comment on it and call it out. Just so many memories, and I wanted to ask you one thing before you take off.
Please.
What are you most recognized for that surprises you? Like somebody walks up and they say a line or ask you to repeat something. Like, what, you saw that?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, by and large, it's usually the last thing that you did. So at the moment, a lot of people are talking to me about this show that I do that's on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it's you'll see it down there at some point because it's an NBC Universal show, but it's called Allegiance. And
season 3, or yes,
we're going into season 3, and I play a bad man, and it's about it's about an Indo-Canadian young police officer in Canada, and I play this man that's kind of keeping her down and keeping everyone who's not my color down.
Okay.
So a lot of people are talking to me about that at the moment, but I don't have a catchphrase. I mean, a lot of people talk to me about Battlestar all the time, just because it was I guess a character that people,
and the fandom is rabid,
enjoyed, and it is rabid, yeah. But it's normally the last thing you did. People are just like, "Hey, aren't you that guy? Like, what were you? Are you an actor?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "What were you on?" And then you start naming things, right? And they're like, "No." And then you name another thing, and they're like, "No." Another thing, "No." And so then you just go, "Oh, fuck it." I mean, it's ridiculous. You tell me who I am.
It's always been my dream to get an actor who's done some big famous things and just talk to them about the one obscure thing that nobody ever talks to them about, and just grill them. What was it like being on set with Joe Smith?
Right.
To go on and just like watch the audience more than the actor. Like, what do you like? Maybe even include them in, but like the audience, like, why aren't you talking to him about Star Trek? Why aren't you like, well, I just really like this movie of the week you did in 1984.
I love it. I
think it'd be a fun interview.
No,
hey, but I want to
100%.
get you out of here. I know you had plans, and I appreciate you staying. Unless you got more time.
I got to go to the theater, and I really appreciate you getting me out. And I have to tell you, what a pleasure. Like, the support means the world, and just a real pleasure talking to you guys. So thank you for everything. And I know Carl will sweep it up from here.
Just before you leave, just before Vince
5-3 Edmonton.
5-3 Edmonton. Yes.
Don't tell me anymore. I need to be surprised. Vince was nominated for the Best Actor Award for Field Sketches in our it's the BC Academy Awards. It's a British Columbia Provincial Film Awards called the Leos, and Vince just got a nomination, and we couldn't be happier for Vince.
And Carl,
congratulations! That's
for Best
awesome.
Director, and the film was nominated for Best Picture. So we're pretty thrilled.
Yeah.
You guys, let me, this is going to sound weird and wrong, but you're the best husband and wife team I know of, because my wife and I do that too. Remember that one time, but you did this.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and our wives know it too. But so thanks for all your support, Nathaniel. Great to meet you.
Great
on
meeting
Zoom,
you.
And thanks for all the support.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Thanks. All right, now let's talk about him.
What a guy, right?
What a guy.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Thank you so much,
It's not easy to be like Vince moves very elegantly from the more journeyman roles, the character roles. Like he plays Mycroft on the new Sherlock Holmes thing.
That's huge.
Yeah, but
Minecraft is a big part of that
sometimes these
universe.
roles are really small. Sometimes he doesn't get a lot to do, and then sometimes it's much bigger. But he's always he always gives it all, But I think that every actor wants to be challenged, and
Yes.
in these roles that he does, and the work that it really pays the bills, doesn't always give you that kind of creative stretch, and it's really nice for him to be able to do both. But a lot of actors, they can't move easily between independent film and the kind of more commercial mainstream. It's very difficult for them. I always have this thing, I feel like, I don't know if you notice it, but when you watch stuff, I always feel like sometimes people's acting is showing. You know what I mean? When you're watching something, you watch them and you feel like you're watching actors.
Yes,
You
yes,
don't
I
feel
know
like
exactly
you're
what
watching
you're talking about.
people. Sort of like
Even
they're
if you're
acting.
good, it's like you're an actor acting. You're not. I don't feel the character.
Like I'm less interested in actors than I am in characters and in people. And that's a trick. It's very difficult for not every actor. Ben Emmanuel is very good at that. He never see his acting. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I when I was doing my research on him, I got the name and then I dug in and I was like, I had some questions. Then when I was watching some of the films and clips and sizzle reels and all that, I was blown away by his level of acting. And having been doing this for a while, not super long, I don't want to make it sound like decades, but I always try to dig in and watch people and see their work and get to know their work. And very few people outside of Ben have made me go, this is next level. There was a young actor in Central Texas. He called it I can't remember what town specifically, but he called it the Texas of Canada. Right. And his intense acting, his ability to make me, there were two different shows in his one reel, and just the dynamic switch between, I'm like, this guy has something. Yeah. And I've talked with a lot of great actors and seen a lot of great things, but every once in a while you just see somebody, or they pick in the right roles to put in the reel. I don't know. Yeah. Where I'm just wowed. And Ben was one of the people as well.
Nice. Wow.
Hey, message from Leslie. Congrats to Carl, Vince, and Field Sketches for all the Leo Award nominations.
Oh, that's our film award program, the Leos. Yeah. Anyway, so but it's tricky because these are very different styles of working. And another thing that happens on independent film is that you don't have always the same kind of conveniences of a big movie. You don't have as much luxury, you don't have as much money, so you don't have as much of everything. You think about the trailers and the food, the catering, the drivers, all this stuff that makes life a little smoother for an actor, especially an actor at the top of their game. There's a tradition in the film biz of treating the above the line particular cast very well, treating them very well. Right. And on an independent film, you're scrambling the eggs, man. You're out there, shoveling the walk. You're starting the car. You're doing the work. It's great.
Yeah. No. You filmed this on the family farm, right? So this was rural.
Yeah, Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's just north of it's kind of connected to, I guess, Montana and the Dakotas, I think, or the border. I'm not sure, but it's the central plains of Canada. My father and his people come from Europe, German immigrants, and my grandfather was a homesteader there, was basically a guy who was running from Eastern Europe and had nothing, and they spoke German, and he had a bunch of books, and they set up this little cabin in the middle of nowhere, and they started to farm the land. And my father was the first one to speak English. He ordered the seed because my grandfather couldn't be understood, and this history is like two generations, it's crazy. And my cousin, who continues to farm the land to this day, has kept the old house that they were born in, that they lived in when my father and his father were young. That's where they lived, and it's epic. It's incredible. And I wanted to film it my whole life, and before it goes away, and the cracks on the walls, the the smoke damage from those old oil lamps that they used to light the place.
I know
They've got
exactly what
these
you're
old
talking
wood
about.
stoves. Like, it's really interesting. And there's a little room in the back that's full of these old crappy bookshelves, and on the bookshelves are all these old German books, the books that my grandfather first had with him. And there's an old trunk, and this is real stuff, man. And as a filmmaker, you find this stuff. And I didn't know that much about some of these details because my father passed when I was really young. So I've had a curiosity my whole life about his history, his story, like these people.
Understood.
So I've spent a lot of time digging around, and there's a beautiful moment where I kick open this trunk in the back of this old farmhouse, and I found all this correspondence, letters that he wrote when he was away. And he went in 1960 to East Germany to get my great grandmother, his grandmother, out of the Eastern Bloc, out from behind the Iron Curtain. She was a refugee after World War II, a German woman, very poor, now living in East Germany, right behind the Iron Curtain, and stuck there, and totally poor and miserable. And my father got a visa to go across to the Deutsche Democratic Republic, the DDR, and he got her out on a day pass to go and see her sister just for the day. And they let her go because it was, she's old, she's not going to escape. And then he put her on a plane. Get her out of there, It's incredible. So I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, I got to put this stuff in the movie. So Vince's character has a little journey of discovery through some of these old letters. And then there's this beautiful flashback scene that takes us back to Germany. And Vince and I flew to Berlin, and I've made a couple of German films in my more recent career. And we flew to Berlin, and I enlisted a handful of actors that are part of this group that I've been working with for years. Really excellent performers. And I had my script, and then they worked with me to shape it into better German, and it's the vernacular of the Eastern Bloc and all this stuff. And we rented an old Trabant, the old East German car
engine piece of shit car.
Cars, they're like lawnmowers, and we found these amazing locations. And I have this friend named Wolf Erhardt who has all this great wardrobe kit from the day, back in the day, and is a East German guy himself. And we headed out and we made these scenes, and this is independent film, man. You just take no prisoners.
I got to tell you, I want to see this film. So whenever I can somehow find a way to see it, please let me know. We'll touch on that towards the end. And I don't want to tell a filmmaker what to do, but I would also love to see a making of this film. Everything you're talking about. I want to see the story behind the story now. This is
that's
amazing
kind
stuff.
of one of the things you notice when you tell these stories to audiences. You realize that there's a lovely narrative there that they don't necessarily know because they're just watching a fictional film. But my message really is that fiction it's make-believe, right? But I believe that there's a relationship between the real and the fictitious. I believe there's a relationship between the documentary and the drama. I think that when you can bring the toolkit of the nonfiction filmmaker into some of the fictional work, I find it really interesting. I find it just walks this nice line. There's something kind of truthful about it. I don't know how many independent films you get to see or if you go to a lot of festivals, but I do quite a bit of work, pre-screening work for different festivals and programming work sometimes. And I've seen a lot of really interesting documentaries. Now, why is that? Why is someone so compelling who is not trained in any way to be compelling on screen? And yet, carefully framed and carefully told, the story is so interesting. I mean, they can be boring and terrible too, of course, but a great documentary is a powerful thing. Why is that? Because real people touch us. They reach out and they touch our hearts because we are real people. And, I'm not so invested when someone's like covered in glorious wardrobe and escapist lighting and fancy this and that and driving the perfect car. Look, that's all fun and relaxing. Maybe it's good escapism, but
sometimes, but
I like that real. There's something about the real. Yeah, it's
I
cool.
used to host a independent film night in Pittsburgh in the Funny Bone Comedy Club on
Cool.
I forget what day a week. I think it was Sundays, and I solicited movies from filmmakers around the U.S. and even the world, and I got a lot, and I saw a lot of really good things like what you're talking about. You go, who is this person that made this
Yeah.
this beautiful,
Yeah.
perfect thing, and then
Yeah.
the next one you load is 100% garbage. You know, like you never know. And I was appreciative of them getting it and the work they put in. And it actually tempered my ability to review a movie and go, they put work into this. They loved what they were doing. I always assume it was a sincere effort. Even if I didn't like it, it was for somebody.
Yeah, that's
And I
very
tried my
generous.
best, but it was also hard to go from something that was like, this is brilliant storytelling by somebody who has no training. Like you read their bio, like I
Yeah.
graduated high school and then I made this. Like that's like, and you see some good
It's-
stuff. It's amazing what is
it
out there
can
that
be,
we
I mean,
never
it's
get
something
to
that's
see.
really, really hard for me, as you can tell, talking to me, but just learning to kind of open up and listen and observe and see what the world brings you. That's where the stories are. This is a Frederick Wiseman idea. I don't know if you know Frederick Wiseman. He's an older man now, but he's one of the great American documentarians. He did so many great films, but one of his films, I'll just throw one title at you, but it's called High School. And it's shot back in the 50s or 60s. It's a long time ago. But he just embedded himself into a high school, urban America, particular year, and he spent an entire year just filming everything, watching everything. He never asked questions. He never interviewed
Okay.
anyone. He just observed. And he didn't have an agenda. He doesn't go into a film project and go, I'm going to tell the story from this point of view. No. He doesn't know. He doesn't know yet. He just observes, and he shoots an enormous amount. And out of it comes a narrative. A story emerges out of this kind of exploration. And that's a very beautiful thing to do. It's respectful. It's honest. Of course, he is the filmmaker processing the material, but it's
He
just,
gets the pick.
it's magical though.
It's
And
real.
I think it's very difficult to raise money for projects like that, because when you tell someone, if I was pitching you to put money into Field Sketches and I said, and we're going to do all this improvising and we're going to explore it together and we're going to maybe go to Germany because I think it'd be really interesting to discover some of these ideas. You'd be like, who is this guy and what's he talking about?
Why do you want to go to Germany for free?
Well, exactly. You need a holiday.
Number one question.
But it's tricky, right? But the magic comes from the listening and the watching and the observing and the accidents. There are accidents every day along the way, little mistakes. And if you're paying attention, they become your little nuggets, these magical things that start to kind of build your story. I do this thing. Ben Emmanuel is a good friend of mine. And I also do some acting workshops for him in his acting school. And I do this story development thing with actors where I give them kind of scenarios, and then we improvise these scenes, and I try to build these scenes out of them, out of who they are, how I perceive them. So I'm processing, it's not just like anything goes. I'm giving them kind of direction, but I'm trying to mine what is particular about them, because I don't believe in movie stars, really. I just believe in people. I think people are interesting, and I think given the right structure, the right idea, the right concept, I think everyone has a really interesting story to tell. Everyone has a compelling character to play. During the pandemic, I was in the middle of prepping a movie, and of course it fell apart. And when we were allowed to kind of go outside again, I couldn't get the unions on board for this film because they were still like government protocols, were still up in the air, la la la. So I had to go non-union with this show. And so my cast fell apart, and I had to cast myself I didn't have to, but if I wanted to make the movie, I had to play this character, this one character. It's not the main character, but a character in the film. And the only way I could play this character was to mine the things that I am, how I communicate, what I'm like. And it was really challenging, and I'm not very good. But it was an incredible experience, just because you grow as a director from having kind of your feet in the shoes of the actor, know what that's like.
understanding what they're doing, and you've been surrounded by the best, so hopefully you've heard a
So
thing or two, absorbed
so
a
if you
thing or
wanna-
two, and you at least know how to approach it, right?
So if you want to watch me in a movie where I'm acting, which is again a big ask, but it's you got to go to Tubi. If you go to Tubi and you enter my name in Tubi like query, you'll come up with some of my titles. I got a bunch of films on Tubi. It's easy to see some of my work. This one's called Evelyn. Evelyn. It's about an African woman, and the poster's like a black woman, profile of her face. But it's my acting debut.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a try. So we only have a little bit of time left. And actually we're technically over. I wanted to make sure we get out about how people can see your film at the Toronto International Film Festival. I don't know. Are there tickets available for this theater at this time?
Yeah, just go to the Review Cinema, so review.ca, and we're on there on the program. And I've got a link in my @Bessai Instagram, like right in my bio. There's a link to the tickets, so you can do it that way. It will be streaming in the States, likely on Tubi, fairly soon. And Tubi's free, so
when we get that information, we will put it under the video here. In
yeah,
the links. There we go. There's Evelyn.
There it is. We just posted in chat.
Oh yeah, that's my acting debut.
Yeah, that's the acting debut. When Field Sketches come out, we'll also have that link up.
Yeah, my distributor is actually based in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and they have a pretty good output deal with some of the streamers. So generally, I find my way into the mainstream, but you do have to dig around.
Yeah,
dig.
We're working. We're friends with a company, Typhoon On Demand, and their big thing is putting up shorts and films by independent filmmakers. And I love it because I talk to so many filmmakers and actors and people in the industry, left or right, musician or otherwise, and there's always shorts involved, and I can never see them because they're only submitted to film festivals. And when they're done with that circuit, I still don't get to see it, and it sucks because I want to see some of these ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you're doing Tubi. I'm glad it's out there and people get to see as much as
look, the streaming thing is great in the sense that it does make it possible to find a lot of stuff you couldn't normally find. We all love that. I just wish it paid a little better. That's one of the things that's frustrating. There's a proliferation of content. Everyone wants their content out there, so it's a battleground to get the kind of value out of the streaming. But you know what? It's a volume game. You just have to keep making films.
Yep, I get it. Hey, Carl, I want to thank you so much for your time being here. I could talk to you absolutely all night long. Nice. I appreciate you giving up some hockey time for us. I'm going to let you get back to it. I wish you I don't need to wish you luck in the future. You are doing what you love doing, and it's such a heartwarming thing to hear. Nice. That you get to do this, that you get to hang out with these creative people, and you get to just do the ultimate. The way Vincent was even talking about how like he would pick this and how you would pick this, and that you're doing it. I hope the next movie's like that. I hope the next movie after that is your ability to create the way you want to.
Thank you so much.
It sounds amazing, and I want to see your film. So, thank you.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hosting us. It was really fun, and it's always a pleasure to talk with cinema enthusiasts, for sure.
Hey, thank you so much. Have a great night. We're going to get out of here. Everybody, have a great night. Carl, stick around one more minute, and after we get out of here, everyone, have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Be safe out there.
Thank you.